finance and business. She's the executive director of Chai, a grant writing company, correct? I'm sorry if I got that incorrect.
You're good.
And fun fact, she is also the author of Before There Are Borders, if you had seen that in the Basel this weekend. Again, as I mentioned today, we really want to discuss the importance of civic engagement, the importance of grants with our not-for-profits and organizations, and we want to speak with you all because at the end of the day, community work involves the community, and the community is made up of all of us. And with that being said, just to define what civic is, right? This is civic engagement. Civic is of or relating to a city, relating to citizenship, or relating to the citizen. That is each and every one of us within the Assyrian community, and we're really excited to get started. Do you guys want to say anything? Any quick hellos?
Can you guys hear me? Do I need a mic?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Oh, I do? Okay, my bad.
Got it.
Pachalta.
So I guess let's start with like what understanding civic engagement is. Have you guys heard of civic engagement? Do you know what that means, or have your own definitions of what that looks like in the Assyrian community? I guess what we would call it is shulut omta, right? Work of the nation, relating to our immediate communities. I'm assuming Turlock, Modesto, San Diego, Ikechayach. But from you guys, what do you guys define civic engagement as?
When the community comes together for something important, that's how I see civic engagement.
That's absolutely the correct answer.
Yeah.
And so with that being saying, like with the community coming together, how does that shape our communities, and how has it shaped it for the history of it and the future?
Sure. Let me start.
Go for it.
So there was an organization many of you might know. It's called Vote Assyrian. Started, I believe, in 2018 in the Chicagoland area. We had a large population, but we had no elected officials or any type of representation in our villages. As a matter of fact, some of our villages were very discriminative towards our people, and still are till today. So not myself, but Billy Haydu, Ramson Benjamin, and Rain Hanna came together and started Vote Assyrian. And since then it has evolved. We've had some losses, but in the short period of time, we have 7 Assyrians elected to office. We've had multiple others elected as well, and either retired or moved away. It is phenomenal. And it's amazing that Josephine is actually sitting next to me, because what started as a grassroots organization to register voters and help individuals get elected to office, it expanded to more than that, and we'll touch base on that in a little bit. But it's come down to where our community is now sought after. We are a commodity. People come to us in the North Shore of Chicago to whether to work with us or help. And then in return, we ask for certain things like capital grants. And we've been receiving them, which is phenomenal. So we want to continue to do that. We want to continue to grow our organization and be civic together for a common cause, and that's to vote for Assyrians.
And when you are speaking about Assyrians, you're speaking specifically about the Illinois community of Assyrians, where there's a huge population.
Right. We're not even the largest population. Mm-hmm. We're barely on the radar. But for Suraya, yes, it's quite a bit of Suraya, right? But we're growing. In the Skokie area, there's a subdivision of schools, District 219. The incoming freshmen are 25% are Assyrian. That's where the language classes are passed. So now you can go to Niles West, Niles North, take Surath, and it's accredited for college. You can go to the next level. That's just one of the things that civic engagement has brought us to the community in just 7 to 8 years.
Yeah, which is amazing. I know there are certain communities as well. Arizona now is implementing a curriculum on genocide awareness, so it's really amazing to see Assyrians kind of taking the platform within our education systems. Mm-hmm. I know even in Michigan they're working on
I believe it passed in Wayne State, actually.
Yeah, in Wayne State, they did it at the college level, but not at the high school. But what's exciting to see is in the last decade, what's impressive to see that in the last decade, I kind of feel like the first generation Assyrians are stepping up and kind of leading our community and making things happen that weren't done before. I mean, Assyrians have been in America for over 100 years. And it's wonderful to see all these major metropolitan areas having these Assyrian leaders stand up and provide services and resources to us that we wouldn't have otherwise. For example, in the city of Sterling Heights, I don't know if this is true, but it has the largest population of Suraye in all of North America. So I lived in Sterling Heights for 10 years, and it was very impressive to see how powerful our community is and how much the political leaders depend on us because our vote matters. And when I realized that these people are trying to reach out to our community because they know our population is so dense there, and here we are not even voting. It's kind of heartbreaking, it's disheartening. How else are we going to plan community projects? How else are we going to deliver what our community needs if our community doesn't participate? So unfortunately, I wish there was more people that were attending this discussion because, again, it goes back to what we're trying to resolve, and that is to make Assyrians be more, to participate in civic engagement and why it is important. And we'll get to that later.
And I know right now we're speaking kind of specifically to where we're all from. For context, Asher and I are both from Illinois. Josephine is from Michigan. But
Well, I was born and raised in Chicago.
Born and raised in Chicago.
Sorry.
Lost the good one. But you know, the beautiful thing about convention is that we have people from all over the world here. We have people from all over America here. So kind of what, in your opinion, or what have you all seen as a national effort from Assyrians in regards to establishing ourselves here in the U.S. and kind of creating a voice for Assyrians everywhere?
The way we see it is that you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet before moving forward. You need that strong base. And you know, there was a saying that I kind of didn't like back in the day for Surah. It would say, Gana Qagana. Okay? It's a very strong statement. But we're not isolated. We're not on an island. We have neighbors, we have friends, maybe different. We have to learn to work together, right? And be able to help each other with our own individual causes. There's so many individuals that I've seen in my life where they don't agree with someone because of a certain hot topic. Even though they agree with 99.99% of all the other topics. It's that one topic we don't agree on and we're now enemies. And that's got to change, especially for Suraya. We are so small. If I tell you how much the Jewish community, the South Asian community has come to me and asked us for help, you would not believe it. But when I sit there and I look at you and I talk to some of you Suraya, and you have zero hope left. Zero. And it kills me. Because even though we're sharing with you our wins, sometimes it's still not enough. And I think it goes back to what Peter said. They've lost the hope, but more importantly, they've lost the trust. And that's what we have to work so hard to do every day, is to regain that trust. So when we bring something in front of you, you believe in us. You will believe in the product and take a chance to listen to what we're talking about. And this goes back to politics. We don't support just Assyrian candidates. We support candidates that are pro-Assyrian. And that's another important issue, because now I've made that person an ally. And they have my back and I have their back. And that's the only way we've been able to grow so quickly. So in the next election in 2025, we have various Assyrians runnings, but we have 3 sections. If we take those 3 sections, and I know some of you know the Chicago geography of it, we will now have representatives in government in Lincolnwood, Skokie, Niles, Morton Grove, Village of Gulf, and the Niles Township. That is the largest swath of land controlled by or participated by Assyrians than any other ethnic community in the whole North Shore. And we're almost there. Thank you. We're almost there, this election in 2025. But what we go back to is we're voting for Assyrians, and that's why it's called Vote Assyrian. Now, I might not align with 100% of what Dr. Joe does, but I can tell you at least 95% of the stuff we align with. And sometimes you have to compromise. And I have to let Joe win once in a while, so then he in return can let me win once in a while. And that's the only way we can move forward. I mean, I have friends that I argue and fight with constantly over things, but our end goal is always the same. It's just that path. How do we get there? I think it's this way. He thinks it's that way. She thinks it's this way. But don't let a certain disagreement or don't let an obstacle deter you away from working on that end goal. And that's what we're doing here at that end goal. And we've just started, literally just started.
There's definitely a disparity in our community right now, especially with the way politics are. It's very black and white, and we're trying to let people see people for who they are, not so much prioritizing policy over politics. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people are kind of blinded by the distracting politics. You got one side that's MAGA, and then you got the other. I'm not trying to, again, sorry, we're not supposed to talk about this, but what I'm hoping for is that we can still have dialogue with people who we may not be in alignment with. We should still feel, comfortable to connect with them, but prioritizing policy over politics.
Absolutely.
So, from my perspective, I'm not involved in politics, full disclosure, because it terrifies me. It's a scary world, and sometimes it's a dirty word, right? So let's take me, for example. I'm just a regular citizen person. I just kind of want to reemphasize, civic engagement. Voting is so important as an individual, as an American citizen, as an Assyrian person. But civic engagement doesn't stop at, being in politics. It's not to say you're not involved in your community unless you are in a position of government. There's so many other ways to be involved in the Assyrian community. I always say, I think sometimes we complain a lot, there's so many Assyrian organizations, what do we do? We need whatever. But I think there's also a silver lining and almost a beauty to it, because there's so many Assyrian organizations, but within that, it creates this opportunity that we're all individuals, and to what you're saying, we might not agree on everything, but because there's so many organizations, you can find your niche and you can get involved in that way. There's just looking at the Baza, there's authors, there's art, there's clothing, there's a motorcycle group, So being involved doesn't necessarily just have to be from a political stance anymore. As an Assyrian. But as an individual, it is important to use your voice and to advocate not only for yourself, but as a community.
I want to actually add to that. There's a certain position in the North Shore, what I mentioned at the very last, which was the Niles Township. And it encompasses many villages. It's Lincolnwood, Skokie, some parts of Morton Grove. And the reason why I'm talking about Niles Township, it's not a government role, believe it or not. Niles Township is in control of the Niles Township Food Pantry. They provide food for those that are low-income housing and that need assistance. They also offer rental assistance. They also offer mental health and a dozen other programs for those that are low to moderate income or that need assistance. The reason why I really wanted to put an Assyrian there is because 30% of the recipients are Assyrian. In the North Shore, in Skokie, in Lincolnwood, in Morton Grove.
What's the income for that area?
I don't, the medium is in the 60s or 70 per person or 100 something for family.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it was important for me. It's not always about politics. Do you know 99% of my jobs is helping Assyrians fix a permit issue. because they decided to do construction on a house without a permit. They get caught. They've heard Asher Sheba is the governor of Morton Grove. He can fix anything. And I swear to God, that's the honest truth. And I get calls from people, and that's my job. I literally help more Assyrians with issues in the village than I do creating policy, than I do doing things like that. But it's okay, because that's why we started Vote Assyrian. We're going to get our people there. Like she said, first gens are stepping up, but I'm 45 years old. I'm a first gen. 10% of the population, 45 or older, are first generations. They're immigrants. 90% of our population weren't born in America. 90%. That's insane. Give us a generation. And look how well we're doing as an Assyrian nation. Per capita, the average Assyrian is doing very well in a country that they're either immigrated to or first gen. We should be hopeful. Be hopeful. We're proving it. You saw the panelists, you saw the TED Talk, the panelists before that. You saw great innovators, inventors, and business leaders. You saw the influencers. I mean, we have bigger influencers that are not even here. We couldn't get Patrick with David here. We couldn't afford his private jet. It is what it is, you know? But we're getting there. Have hope. Have trust. Get involved. 5 hours a month. 5 hours a month. I do about 5 hours a day. But you can do 5 hours a month. I promise you it makes a world of difference. Just a little bit of involvement. Just get involved. That Gishru trip that they talked about, more than half of the people that were here already been to Gishru. And I'm like, you've already been there. Why are you here? Let us learn. I've never been here. But no, they're here because they loved it. And they want to stay involved. It was amazing. What an amazing thing. It's kudo.
Honestly, Joe's and Avi, guys, can we just give a round of applause?
It's a team, though. It's a team.
Definitely.
And that's the thing. You have to have a good team. You have a good team.
Absolutely.
You'll never be
That's a humble leader right there.
If you guys want to know the definition of civic engagement, I think Joe Donavi is a great example.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go back again to the individual, because I think a lot of here, is anyone here involved in politics? Okay.
Perfect.
Are we involved in the Assyrian? I'm assuming we're all involved in the Assyrian community in some form, because we're all spending 4 days of our long weekend together with Assyrians. Yes.
Well, I am the Assyrian community in Miami Beach, so.
There you go.
Hey.
Well, we're
awesome.
lucky to come visit. So it's amazing to see the growing communities, as well as, we spend more time here in the States. So I kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying about, agreeing and being a voice, because I can't emphasize this enough, and I'll probably repeat this more and more, that we are a community, and we are a struggling community, and we are at a turning point where right now we have more people outside the homeland than there, right? So for the past hundreds of years that we've been in America, as Josephine said, it was all about establishing ourselves here, making sure we're okay, literal survival, right? Escaping wars and escaping genocides. But now we're at a point where we're trying to save our land, we're trying to save our people, we're trying to preserve. Instead of just survive, it's a lot more of work that it's more preventative, I guess. So I see an Assyrian, this is a hypothetical, I see an Assyrian running, and maybe I don't agree with them. And I don't want to vote for them, it makes me uncomfortable or something. But I guess I want to pick your brains about how do I, even if I don't support them, even if I don't want to vote for them, how do I still support them as a fellow Assyrian?
Don't attack them. You don't like them? Don't attack them. Don't tell anybody else not to vote for them. Don't attack them. Leave them alone. Let them do what they're doing. There's no reason to add discouragement towards an individual, especially one that is Assyrian. I don't agree with you. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to attack you. Let you run the race. That is the best answer I can give you, and I've seen it over and over again. If we can all continue to do that, that would be great.
It's people over politics.
Yeah.
TVs do that. We have 3 stations in Modesto series. They talk about our representatives. citizen who's trying to get into some positions.
Mm-hmm.
You see that you learn about that person from stations, Syrian stations.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong.
Yeah,
The Syrian stations are doing it?
Yes.
yeah.
They talk about him, they say this is how he is, they open his
Sure.
Yeah,
right?
it's dirty laundry.
So what I would like to say to that is divest from it or divest from it. Turn it off. Don't donate.
I don't listen to
Exactly. And if anybody supports them and they sponsor them, it's detrimental to the community.
It is.
So if someone is attacking someone else publicly, it's detrimental to the community, and we must be offended for it. We must rise up and fight for each other. It's the only way to do it. You know what? Babylon Market, you support so-and-so, and he's there talking all this bad stuff. I'm not shopping here anymore. And trust me, the guy from Babylon Market's going to call that person, why are you talking like this? I'm not going to support you anymore. And it'll change. It will change. But it's culture. It's conversations.
So I just want to play devil's advocate.
Sure.
So there was a discussion at the convention this year about actually like saying basically the opposite of what you're saying right now, is that we should, if we see an Assyrian doing something wrong or working against Assyrian art, we should quote unquote expose them or attack them in the name of transparency and fairness and for the overall good. So how do you, let's say, consolidate that with the idea of being good for the Assyrian?
Sure.
Can I answer this one?
Of course.
And this is my personal opinion, so I don't know if it's the answer you're looking for, but this is just based on my experience. My background, I've been involved in the Assyrian community probably about 7 years, 8 years, a good amount of time. So I've seen a good amount of things, you know. Well, take that as you will. I think there's two extremes of that, like to be like, completely, you know, if you see someone talking, if you see someone you don't agree with and everyone's talking bad or whatever, don't engage. And then there's like on the other end of the spectrum, attacking, right? There is a middle ground here, and that's accountability, in my opinion. And I think there's an eloquent way of doing it where we can do it internally. There needs to be dialogue. I think a lot of times we are a small community. We all know each other, or we know of each other, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to work with them because I heard this, right? Or I'm not going to work with them because my friend won't work with them. We need to talk to each other. There's so much of this, you know, I don't want to, whatever. But it shouldn't be a bad thing to talk, and I think accountability, as I'm saying, is what we need to strive for, what we need to achieve. If someone's doing something that's inherently bad for Assyrians, that hurts Assyrians, or is just detrimental, it's not positive, hold them accountable, right? Like, that shouldn't be something that, I don't know why that's never the option, I guess. It's like we go to the one or the other extreme. And I think figuring out that process, figuring out how we do that, you know, with poise and peacefully is the ultimate goal, I guess. And as I said, politics is dirty. It can be scary. And since we are such a small community, if we just keep fighting each other, if we keep, you know, attacking each other or exiling people or whatever, it's not going to help us. Does that make sense?
I'm gonna add to it too. So what you're saying right now has become more of a large scale and more party driven versus Assyrianism. For instance, if an Assyrian is absolutely gross, very disgusting, racist, all that stuff, that's 100% we agree. We blackball them. We don't need that. Like, we're going back to the civic engagement part, community. Our community is not just Suraya. Your neighbors are not Suraya, but you're their community. So going back to that, if they're absolutely disgustingly gross, yes, 100%. Now, if it's a party line, if it's some individual that believes a certain way, whether they're conservative or progressive, those are not issues that we should only focus on. again, there's hot topics. Sometimes for a certain individual like myself, I am anti-war. Anytime a president comes up there and says, we're going to go and we're going to bomb them and we're going to kill, I don't care if it's my brother, I'm not voting for them. I've helped too many Assyrians settle into the North Shore that came because of ISIS. Okay? Have those conversations. Make sure they're not on a federal side where it's Republican versus Democrat. Make sure that we understand what we're actually talking about. Why is this person going to be blackballed? What is it about? If they are racist and disgusting, I agree with you. But you can do it a different way. We don't have to expose our people out. We're already very vulnerable.
It doesn't have to be like a big razilua, and we don't have to have it be so extreme. If there is someone who's trying to be a leader for our community and they're doing something that's ilba or doing something that's illegal, we can go about it without, publicly smearing them online and, making social media posts about it. There's other ways. If you really feel strongly about it, have kind of like a, what's that thing, intervention?
Yeah.
And having, all the other community leaders come together, whether it's church leaders or other community leaders, and approach this person who is trying to be a representative of our community and address things in a calm and organized way versus just having all, 20, 30, 100 people blasting him on social media. It doesn't really make a difference or make a significant impact versus having a seat, having some chai and talking and being like, hey, listen, this is not okay.
I kind of want to go back to the voting thing because it is an election year. And most importantly, next spring is local elections. And other than our only friend in Miami Beach, I think a lot of us live in densely Assyrian areas. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question, but I kind of am curious. How many people here are registered to vote? Okay, that's awesome. I think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's a great.
And
That's
so
great.
I guess, kind of going back to the larger scale of things.
Let me ask you a question, I'm sorry. When you do go out and vote, do you make sure your parents vote? Raise your hands if you make sure your parents vote.
They took my mom 9 years with me to vote.
Thank you.
That's Magana.
That is the most important thing. Thank you all very much for that. That is one of the most important things. Now, for instance, anytime Assyrians go out to vote, they know. And I'll tell you why. Because when we had an Assyrian running for Congress, we registered thousands of brand new voters. Thousands. And you know what happened right after that? We started getting phone calls from every elected official in the North Shore. Sit down, let's have a meeting, let's talk. They know, we know. I could tell you right now how many Assyrians voted last election in every village, every township, through data. We get that data. It's very important for you guys to understand how powerful we can be, especially in certain areas like Chicago and LA and Modesto and San Jose. There's so many places in Michigan, the largest business owners in Michigan. So there's hope. Just don't lose hope and don't lose trust.
It's funny. California is democratic state, which I hate having the Newsom guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to a Syrian to go out, we find him, he has to be perfect. Newsom is not perfect. Pelosi is the worst person, but still they won.
Yeah.
So
Their base is larger than your base.
judging each other,
Yeah.
let them be whatever they are, as long as they're moving
Yeah.
better than what we have now.
But you know what's also important that we're not even talking about is the nonpartisan part. I'm elected in the village of Morton Grove. I didn't run as a Republican or a Democrat. I ran against Ashur Shiva, a person living in Morton Grove. In Modesto, you have a city council, you have a mayor. Get involved. Why isn't Modesto's mayor an Assyrian? Why isn't Turlock's mayor an Assyrian? I mean, these are the questions that we should have.
We attack them.
Because we attack them, right.
They want them to be perfect. No one is perfect.
Nobody's perfect, no.
None of our Californian are perfect, but we still stop against
Yeah, because we're still fighting about he's a Republican and he's a Democrat. And he's not thinking like, this guy's going to help me with my permit or my garbage cans. That's the difference.
Okay, so another thing I feel like it's important to address that voting affects the services that we get.
Oh, yeah.
So who we have elected, whatever position it may be, has power to make things happen for our community. And I'd like to highlight some of the gains and wins that our community has because of Senor Ashur Shiba. ever since Asher got involved, he's a great relationship person. He knows how to build relationships. And what he did is he was able to help secure a $250,000 grant to help build a daycare in our community.
It's a team. It was a team.
But because he was our voice, because he was able to advocate for us, he was able to get the state to approve this earmarked funding. But what did he have to do? He had to collect signatures. This is why we need the community to be engaged. We need those signatures. Otherwise, how is the state going to know this is something our community needs? So this is just
let me
one
add to
small
that.
example.
So don't lose it, because I'm going to add to it and you jump
Okay,
back in.
bookmarking.
The senator asked me, he said, can you give me 500 signatures by the end of the week? This was Thursday, Friday. I said, I'm going to try. It's hard. We had over 1,000 signatures Saturday and Sunday. 97% were in the Skokie area where there was Assyrians that out of town, and we specifically said, if you're not from this area, don't register. Don't sign up, but they registered anyways because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do it anyways. They're not going to know. You know how Assyrians are. Look, I'm going to do it anyways. So then I sent it to the senator, and he's like, how did you get all these names and stuff? I said, we put it online. He goes, there's no effing way. And I'm like, okay, it's online. It's online. I'm like, go look. I showed him my phone. And literally, while I'm showing him my phone, we got more signatures.
Wait, Asher, can I make you pause now for a second?
Sure.
As the Gen Z person on this panel.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that when we come, like, a lot of people say, I think I remember last convention, an older gentleman said, like, he like grabbed his phone, he goes, "Ani ina metpatan hediye." Like, these are our villages now. Because we're all spread out, right? And the phone hadiya is like a way for us to all be connected. And I think it's so crazy. You don't want to be involved in an organization, that's fine. You don't want to be involved in politics, that's fine. But the sheer, the 10 seconds it takes to share something on Instagram, on Facebook, even if it's a story for 24 hours. 24 hours, you just use a little bit of your voice for the Assyrian community, and look at what that can generate, you know? And I don't know, to me it's like, I always get so shocked when I'm on Instagram, and you know, especially I always joke, I'm like, I wish I could have my American friends log into my social media for a week, because it's probably what is going on here? It's all organizations, and maybe it's Suraya, but I don't know, I think it's just a really amazing thing. And I know we always talk about social media being a bad thing, or it can be isolating, or it can kind of create issues, but I think it can also be a really great thing when we, again, come together as a community to advocate.
Yeah. And advocacy works very well with what Josephine was talking about, the grant portion of it. We've been able to receive millions of dollars, over $1 million. I have another $750,000 in grant pending. I'm not even a grant writer. I don't even want to ask what she's doing and how many grants she's probably working on. But it's possible to receive money, and we've done it, and we've proven it. I mean, you want to touch a little bit about Chai and what you can do and help?
Sure. So Chai is a new nonprofit. It's a women-led organization, and what we do is we help partner with existing nonprofits and businesses and help them realize either government contracts or grants with government or foundations. So what Chai is basically an international platform where people anywhere in the world can join. And I currently have members that are in Iraq, and they're NGOs. And for example, right now I'm working on a grant for solar water pumps and irrigation in partnership with the U.S. Embassy for Nkawa. So that's something that I'm working on. And at the same time, I'm also securing grant funds for a business incubator in San Diego serving refugees. So it's not me. I'm just doing the paperwork part. It's the organizations that I'm supporting. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel and start another Assyrian Aid or another Shlama or another ACF or AUA. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to do is take these wonderful organizations and help build them to take them to the next level. So what Chai does, I help build nonprofits and take them to the next level. And I can't do that without the participation of these nonprofits.
Josephine, can you give a little bit of background on grants in the Assyrian community or just in general? I don't know if there's just a definition or what it looks like in the regards of our organizations.
Okay. Do you guys, anyone know what grants are or no? Okay, so grants are kind of work like scholarships. Do you guys know what scholarships are? You basically have to be a student, a good student, and in return you get access to free education and resources. So now grants are very similar. You have to exchange a service or some sort of program in exchange for funding. So whatever the government can't do itself, it will grant funding to grassroots organizations who can make it happen. So a lot of grants aren't all-inclusive. What that means is you cannot depend on government grants to operate your organization 100%. It will help supplement your organization's revenue. Your eyebrows went like this, so that means I said something that threw you off.
I just have that face.
Oh, you just have
It does not mean anything.
That's why he's always behind the camera.
Okay, so this is like your focus face. Okay, essentially what grants do is it helps give a boost for an organization that's already doing well. It's not something that just because you're okay, let me debunk some myths. Just because you have a 501c3 doesn't mean you're going to get a grant. You have to be doing the work. You have to set up the framework for a successful organization. Nonprofits operate very much like businesses. It is a business. The only difference is any profits or revenue goes back into the nonprofit. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and let me touch base on some of the stuff that we do on the advocacy side of Vote Assyrian, right? Joey Hermes is actually here. He and his wife led an amazing, amazing program for the census 2020. I know a lot of people might have not heard, but it was so well done that you've received accolades from, what is it, Homeland, Department of Homeland, or
U.S. Census Bureau.
U.S. Census Bureau, and they just said they did such an amazing job to count us, which are a hard to reach, hard to count community. But since then, working because of the census and the other stuff that we do on the advocacy side, in the state of Illinois, we've now been able to create a subcategory for us as MENA, Middle East, North Africa. So we're no longer quote unquote white on the census. Now what happens when you do something like that? And if there's a population of 8 million people and 750,000 click MENA, you now become a minority. And when you become a minority, you get minority funding, grants, scholarships, and access to programs that other people couldn't get. We're working side by side, even though we're not working together, but one thing has to happen before the other thing can happen, right? And it's amazing because now in 2030, MENA is a category on a US federal census. So that's something huge that actually we've been able to work on. But those efforts were because of Joey Hermes and his wife, Mary. They did such an amazing job. During COVID, we employed 40-something individuals at one time, paying them really good money to go out and knock on people's doors and say, hey, you're not Lebanese just because you were born in Lebanon. You're Assyrian. Make sure you're other and write Assyrian, or whatever you want. But stop giving those people that count. So because of that, go ahead, Joey.
Sorry, if I could just comment on that as well. And I think this speaks directly to what you all have been talking about. I mean, yes, the census was one great project. Obviously, Osher and Vote Assyrian was able to get the grant to even fund the work in the community, right? And I think that's sort of an aspect that's sort of overlooked when we talk about community engagement, civic engagement. It's bringing our tax dollars back into the community. When we think about the Chicago area, for those of you who've been to Chicago, there's a very large, Jewish American population. And for the longest time, a lot of their schools, right, their parochial schools were all funded through state funding, right? So they had tax dollars coming back in to actually run their schools, right? And we talk a lot about that, well, how come we don't have Assyrian schools? And, the couple of attempts that we've had in the past was essentially self-funded by Assyrians, which, was self-limiting. But I mean, these are sort of the efforts, right? The census was one where, when we're saying we're paying people $25 an hour, you know what I mean? Like they were being paid very well to do this work, and it was very impactful. And honestly, Oscar, you guys are being very humble too, because it's not just, and Josephine mentioned earlier, it wasn't just the $250,000 for the Montessori school, but you guys secured $250,000 for the Assyrian Community Center in Skokie, 5050 Church Street, which was a huge win. $50,000 for the Lamasu Center. I mentioned this earlier, that's how I remember it all. $50,000 for the Lamasu Center, which is also in Chicago. I mean, this all goes back to the fact that, if we're not engaging with our local officials, if we're not engaging with, governmental bodies and, addressing our concerns as a community, then, yeah, we're not, guys, we're not, what's the expression? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yep.
Right?
That's exactly the expression.
And that's the point. Like, we have to work together at the table, right? We're not going to agree with
Right.
a lot of people. We're going to be sitting across the aisle from people probably who disagree very wholeheartedly on a lot of issues. But if we can come together on issues that are mutually beneficial and support our community, I think that's the overriding sort of emphasis, especially when it comes to civic engagement and community work.
You missed the $250,000 for the Assyrian Chamber of Commerce to
Yes,
launch.
sorry.
If you're going to glow it right, Joey.
Okay, I'd like to take a second to kind of summarize the importance of civic engagement and all the different levels that it entails. So it's important to elect members of our community. Why? Because we have to go to them and let them know what we need. If you do not know whoever your congresswoman or congressman is, I highly recommend you get to meet them. They are there to serve you. They're not there just to have a fancy title. They are there to serve. So if you haven't already, please take an opportunity to learn about who your congresswoman or congressman is, because these people are going to help appropriate funding. So let me take a step back. Every year, the federal government has a budget, and that budget is determined by a formula. That formula is based on population. Now, why it's important that we have a MENA designation is now that we are able to help designate ourselves and our identity, not specifically Assyrian, but MENA, now the federal government is aware of exactly how many people are in these major metropolitan areas. And that formula will be distributed more evenly versus just going to white. So now that we have this MENA designation, we are able to appropriate funding more efficiently. And then when we have that relationship with the leaders, they can tell, the congressman can help vouch for our projects or programs so that we can get that funding allocated to us. So, and then grants. Now, where does grants come in? Grants are basically writing like the most amazing scholarship letter or application for college and proving why you deserve this money or deserve to have an opportunity to work with the government or foundation or whatever entity you are requesting funding support from. So then the grant process is basically a nice proposal that summarizes exactly what it is that you are trying to do with the money and why it's important. So grants are just a very small aspect to the bigger picture of everything else that's going on. Grants is just an application with questions and then being as clear as possible of what it is that you plan on doing with this money. So I hope that was a good way of kind of getting you the big picture and then bringing it down of why it's so important that we not only elect people from our community, but those who are willing to hear our voice.
Right.
That's awesome.
You asked me to bookmark something.
Sure.
Remember you asked me, you was like, hold that thought?
Then we were talking about the grants, and
Okay.
we were talking about minority grant funding, and that's
Yeah.
why I brought the MENA thing up, because we are going to be considered a minority very soon, and you should take advantage of it, because that's why you came to America, right? To have a better life. There's programs, there's things out there for you, and if you don't ask, you don't know. And if you do know and you don't take advantage of it, shame on you. That's why this country is so amazing. So, but look, I think we should wrap up today. If you have any questions, we'll take them just really quickly. Go ahead, James.
I just want to congratulate you all, especially you, Usher Bas Magana,
Thank you.
How far you've come since I went to that first fundraiser for Florida Syrian at that little.
I remember.
Isles
Yes.
near the police station in December 2017.
Yep.
There was that candidate. Wow, I never imagined. What I just heard, I'm like, just floored. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So that's great.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess just saying like, thank you to both of you for being, pillars, being advocates of our community, taking that extra step, helping kind of be something that can be mentoring to us as young people, or younger, I should say.
She's making fun of me. Always. She's my age. Don't let her looks fool you. She's my age.
I'm a millennial, no offense.
And I want to thank all of you. I just want to, I don't know, I was just talking to somebody else, like I get so happy seeing Assyrians come together, being able to talk to each other and work together. And at the end of the day, like, we are such a small community, and I guess this doesn't really have to do with politics or with grants. It's just like peace and love. But, we're so small, and building each other up, advocating for our communities, advocating for where we live, providing better. I think there's sometimes a fear, like now that we're entering second generation, third generation being born here, what does that look like for our future? But establishing ourselves, not losing that hope and continuing to work with each other and for each other, gives me a lot of hope as somebody, I don't know.
Yeah. And again, we're still building. You can help, you can start, you can do something. You can ask and we can guide you. Because I'll tell you right now, if you say, I want to get involved, what do? I'm not going to tell you to come work for me. I'm going to say, this is where we need help in. I can't do this and that, right? I can't make this cup and pour the water. I'm going to do one. Instead of going, you pour the water. I will make the cup, you pour the water. Right? Now we're working together without working together. And that's how we're doing. I'll send her an email. I'll send her 5 emails. She'll text me back like 2 days later. What was the third email about? And I'm like, damn, Josie, I don't remember what's going on here. But like, I see grants come in for just the state of Illinois. She's not in Illinois, but she's talking to so many people. I'm not talking to all those people. I sent forward an email. Hey, look at all this. It's pretty cool. So you were going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say the grant thing is something that a lot of Western organizations don't even, it's not in their process of fundraising. They fundraise from our own,
Yes.
and we overstop the resources. So
Right.
the grant thing is a great idea.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask, do you have, so to vote Assyrian also brings the question of how many Assyrians are there in the United States? Do we have that number?
No, the federal government blocked the census information. Actually, Joey sued, I think, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. I don't know. I'm not trying to spread rumors.
No, we FOIA requested.
Oh yes,
data.
FOIA.
We FOIA requested data because it hadn't been released yet, but it is released now. And I think the Census Bureau even had like a sort of a really nice summary that they did. So there is a breakdown. Of course, again, it's still not really as accurate as we'd like it to be. But I mean, again, there's really no surprises. The areas where we know our population lives, we can see sizable numbers. In the Chicago area in the state of Illinois, the second largest Middle Eastern population is Assyrian. Palestinians, people who identify as Palestinian, sort of are the largest population, and then Assyrians, in the entire state of Illinois.
But
and that's not even taking into consideration how many Assyrians, despite our best efforts, probably still wrote Iraqi, Syrian, Lebanese on the census application when they completed it, right? It's not even taking into consideration that. So,
do we have a number though?
I don't know it offhand. I want to say like maybe 46,000, 36,000. But again, that's people who explicitly wrote in Assyrian.
In Illinois?
In Illinois, yeah. I mean, there's still challenges to that. Regardless, though, we sort of are now very visible in the census data, right? That was not the case for a very long time.
And don't forget, in 2020, it was very polarizing because what they were talking about was people were scared that they were going to get raids.
Oh.
And we did have an ICE raid. They arrested over 100 Chaldeans and Assyrians. So a lot of people didn't even want to fill that out. They didn't want to give the government their information. They were scared. And I've noticed that. We've taken calls on that, and we tried to convince them otherwise. But still, you know.
It's supposed to be anonymous, right?
It's supposed to be anonymous, but it's not really anonymous because you're filling out your information and you're mailing it. But to Assyrians, you know, it was scary at the time.
So it is anonymous, but it eventually becomes accessible later on. So that's why you can actually look up old census forms, like we had some presentations earlier in the day. So we can actually see people's names, addresses, all that. So eventually all of that information will be public. I think it's 50 years after the census, it becomes available. But we had a question in the back. Oh.
James.
It's really more of a comment. I'm so happy that Boris Syrian realizes that, because I would hear people say, oh, why doesn't the senator do this, or why doesn't the government do that? If you can't offer a vote to a politician, why should they? You know what I'm saying? I know that their job theoretically is to serve us, but really they see their job as how are they going to get reelected.
Right.
You know? So if you can't offer them a vote, why should they waste their time on you and your issues if you're not even registered to vote? You're not a voter.
Absolutely. 100%.
I'm glad that you guys get that, you know?
Thank you.
It's so important.
But everybody here gets it too, because when she asked the question, everybody raised their hands.
It's not that they don't really care about the daycare center, but if you're not registered, you can't vote for them, why should they allocate funds for the Syrian daycare?
Right.
Daycare center, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for
It's
that.
all about votes.
It's all about votes.
If I could just chime in on one thing, and sorry guys, I was originally supposed to be on the panel, and then I was like, you know,
Kicked off. I kicked them off.
he kicked me off. He's like, no, I don't, because I was going to talk about sort
Sitting
of,
in the corner.
sort of like that. I was going to give a brief overview of like Assyrian engagement in politics and you know, civic engagement generally, and kind of a Chicago-focused presentation that I gave. Because in Illinois we do have a caucus at the state level, the Illinois Assyrian Caucus.
Yeah.
It's, you know, bipartisan Democrats and Republicans, the Illinois General Assembly, and we had a presentation a couple of years ago at the Assyrian National Council of Illinois. And I mean, we are in a very unique position, and Ashra sort of touched upon it in the very beginning, because we've actually had many Assyrians who've been elected to public office, who've been very prominent, you know, working in government, and this is all outside of like, you know, the context of like when we talk about lobbying, right? This is not, we mentioned nothing about lobbying because this has nothing to do with lobbying, right? This is actually like being involved in the political process in our hometowns, in our cities, in our local governments. And I think the one major change that I see personally, and I've sort of highlighted, is the fact that we've actually had many Assyrians elected to public office, but we haven't really had the institutional support at the community level to make an impact with that. Now we do. I mean, we're seeing it in Illinois, and that's sort of at a small scale, like local elected officials, right? Putting Assyrians on the map, getting our language taught. For the first time, you know, in the United States history, the Assyrian language is now considered a world language by the state of Illinois. Right? That was a major accomplishment, right? And you know, that's sort of just the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important process that people need to know, that we need to be engaged. A lot of Assyrians, I'm sure you know this, they're like, oh, politics. We don't like politics.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, do you have a strong position on abortion? Do you have a strong position on guns? Do you have a strong position on what kids are taught in school? Okay, then you clearly are very political, right? Because these are important topics that we're having national conversations about. There's laws being passed, and if you care, then you should be involved. You know, and I think that's like a really important thing that we need to stress with our community, that politics, it's not just going to pass us by, that it's going to impact us directly, and we need to be involved.
Yeah.
And then if I could just add on to that, and the majority of the stuff that actually comes back to the community is local. And from my experience, and Ashwin, you're way vast more experience than I do, but local politics is actually not very controversial. Yeah. Like the topics that come up to election are very not controversial.
Correct.
The vast majority of communities should not have. We all should be on one issue. Yeah. You know, it's not really dividing at all.
Right.
Like on the federal level, I mean, it's completely different. You know?
Yeah. Stick to local. Stick to civic. Civic engagement.
Illinois is in a wonderful job laying the framework for so many important issues, whether it's language or civic engagement. And I think that what we're seeing is that what was done in Illinois is now being duplicated or trying to be duplicated in every major metropolitan area. So I'm sure not everyone here is from Illinois, but whenever you guys go back home, make it a point to connect with your community leaders or the local congressmen and representatives so that we can duplicate what was done in Illinois and then showing them like, hey, they were able to do this. We want this here too. We want this in our high schools, like in Turlock, Modesto, in San Diego, Arizona. This is something that we can show them like, look, there's already a model and they succeeded. And we want to duplicate this. So use Illinois as the model and showing them, look, it's been done and we want it to be done here.
I think
Call us anytime.
I think in each community, I think it's the same as I was saying earlier about our organizations, right? There's so much creativity, and it starts at the individual, each and every one of us. Everyone has a talent, everyone has something that they are really, really good at. That flows into our organizations, where every organization excels at what they're doing. And I think that goes into our communities as well. Each community can be a footprint. We can all learn from each other. There is no competition, because at the end of the day, we are just trying to survive in a land that accepted us, that we had to escape. I guess not my parents and my grandparents, but that's all it is. And I think the future looks really bright. I think it's really amazing to see how much we have established ourselves and how much we will continue to do so. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I know we're a little bit over time, way over time in the general scheme of things. Usher, Josephine, thank you both for everything that you guys do. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. Thank you, Joey Hermes, too. Thank you, guys.